lost my camera. Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode live from Jerusalem with Rabbi Aaron Dovid Poston. Unfortunately, we haven't had a broadcast in the last few weeks, so I had to chroma key myself in here really quickly because I just set this up. So forgive me if it doesn't look perfect. Let's just jump right in. And Rabbi, it's been a wonderful class so far, teaching us the 48 ways to wisdom. And I know he's not going to disappoint today. So let's jump right in. Rabbi Poston, so good to be with you. It's been a few weeks. I missed you. I missed the wisdom of Torah, and I look forward to everything you got to share, sir.
Thank you very much, Dan, for hosting this. I'm glad to be back. Hopefully everyone had a pleasant vacation, holiday, Chag, whatever schedule you're on. And I'm just really glad to be back. And tonight, wow, I'm going to tell you, I have to state first my own humility. The topic tonight is, we'll say for mature adults only. No, I'm kidding. You know, to a certain extent, yes. It takes a very mature person to be able to understand these ideas.
Beautiful.
We're going to call it marriage power, the power of marriage. Okay. Now, just to review the idea, there are the 48 ways to wisdom. Rav Noach Weinberg, Zatzal, right? This was his, I don't know what you want to call it. You know, one of his mainstays when it came to his lectures, the curriculum. He wanted to advance people, right, to acquire Torah. And it matches up with the time period we're in right now called the counting of the Omer, right? We count 49 days till the revelation at Mount Sinai. So during these 48 ways, we don't just count time, we make time count, right? We take advantage of the ways. This is Chazal, the great rabbis, explained during these 49 days, we are supposed to grow. We're supposed to make ourselves vessels to acquire the Torah. So it's not just for Jews to work on their character. Obviously, every human being has issues, character flaws, character development. So therefore, this class of the 48 ways to acquire wisdom is definitely appropriate. Now, some of the details, when we're talking about marriage, issues such as nida, you know, when a woman is in the process of her menstrual cycle, so there are a lot of restrictions and even rabbinic restrictions for Jewish men and Jewish women. So these are obviously not prescribed, right? They're not even obligated, although there's a tremendous amount of wisdom that we're going to discuss tonight that I think will be enlightening, right? And you can acquire, you can take on, you could
apply
the wisdom of whatever it is we're talking about into your own life. It just doesn't apply on the exact same level, but the wisdom is just unbelievable, right? This is really what life is all about. So in Hebrew, this is number 17, by the way, and in Hebrew it's called mi'ut derech eretz. Mi'ut always means diminishing, right? So you're diminishing something which is going to help you acquire wisdom. And so derech eretz is a very vague term. It could mean manners, being polite, but we're not going to use that term tonight. It's going to be used in terms of sexual relations. And we'll explain why that term is used. First of all, the rabbis are very modest, and they're going to discuss it in a way that is, modest. What other word can I say? Clean, naki, right? They use lashon naki, a clean language to discuss ideas. So one of the principal ideas that we must get across is that intimacy between husband and wife in Hebrew is called yediyah. What does yediyah mean? Yediyah means knowing, right? Like in the biblical sense, okay? So when a man knows his wife, I mean, you just go to, which verse that I wanted to use for this. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. And you want to read it in English, and then I'll read it in Hebrew?
Sure. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, and she said, I have acquired a man with the Lord.
Okay, so the idea of minimizing, we'll call it sex, okay? Minimizing the physical relations, because it will then hopefully maximize the other aspects of the relationship. And I just wanted to also preface this in my own humility. I don't know how much of an example I can be, right? In my own life, okay, I've been married several times. You know, it's a great challenge. But a man should be married. And through this, the power of marriage, you'll see how important it is. Okay, so I have my own challenges. And I'm not here to, talk that much about my own personal life. I have a lot of experience, and I will share it tonight, some of it. But we're going to try to glean the gems of not only Rav Noach and how he expressed these ideas, but through the Torah itself. So the first thing, we just brought this verse, now man knew his wife, and she conceived. So in Hebrew, Adam yoda et Chava Ishto. So, what is this idea of knowing? I know I don't like to bash Christianity, but it ends up happening a lot. I think there is a certain aspect that sex is considered either dirty or a sin to a certain extent. I mean, I'm not going to get into the ideas, but it's not so simple, right? Judaism does not believe in celibacy. That we know, right? We have even our high priest has to be married, right? I mean, everyone has to be married. How can you live your life? How can you reach your potential? How can you curb your evil inclination? How can you learn to love another human being, right? You should love another as yourself. The ultimate, right? That's like Rabbi Akiva says, that's the ultimate in Judaism. If I would sum up all of Judaism is love your neighbor as yourself. The rest is commentary. If you're not living with another human being in close proximity, sharing a bed, sharing breakfast, sharing your troubles, just to vent, and if there isn't any friction, I mean, there has to be, right? For growth to happen, there will be some friction. I mean, if you marry your clone, you'll never grow as a human being. I mean,
right.
So there will be, and it's natural to have this tension. And the question is what to do about it and how to handle it. So in respect to a Jewish marriage, some things will seem very unnatural and out of place. But hopefully, through what we talk about tonight, it will clarify, right? You'll be able to see why we do what we do. And hopefully you'll glean pieces of wisdom for your own life. So even the first of the commandments, right? To know that Hashem is your God, right? Even though it says, number one commandment, I am the Lord your God. We all know that is a command to know God. Okay? Yediah means to know. It means intimacy. If I would say I know that woman who's just walking across the street, I wouldn't use the word in Hebrew, Yediah. I wouldn't say I know her. That would mean she's my wife. I would say in Hebrew, ani makirota. I recognize her. It's like a big difference. I'm aware of her presence, and that's it. But to know somebody intimately, like we know Hashem, over and over, the Torah says, to know me, right? You have to know Hashem. Wow. So obviously knowing is actually a positive thing. And this whole marriage thing is in order for us to ultimately have a relationship with Hashem. Right? There's different types of mitzvahs. There's mitzvahs bein Adam lechavero, between man and man, and there's mitzvahs between man and God. And ultimately, we talked about the fifth commandment is honoring your parents. Why is it in the first set of tablets? The first 5 deal with between you and God. The last 5, the second of the 2 tablets, are mitzvahs between man and other human beings. Yet honoring your parents is in the first set. It's number 5. It's because that's ultimately, hopefully, how you can come to a awe and a respect for Hashem. So through marriage, and I know my wife, she is so spiritual. She says, I mean, she was single for a long time, and she said the only reason I really wanted to get married is to know Hashem, to feel what it means to be in a covenant with another human being, and to know Hashem. So hopefully that is ultimately our goal. If we can all get to that point. My wife is very, very holy. So just to know, the very first idea we just read was in Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. Okay, so in Judaism, a marriage is called kedushin. So if your ear is attuned, you hear the word kadosh. In kedushin, that is like a verb, right? It's the coming together. So I think even in English they call it holy matrimony. They do call it holy, right? I mean, I think that's, I don't know, maybe certain religions call it that. I know today there's even like this concept, I guess, secular marriage or civil law marriage. Maybe they don't use the word holy matrimony.
Oh, the Catholics definitely do.
I don't know. But the idea is that it is kadosh. Kadosh means separate, right? She is now separate from all other men, and you are dedicated to taking care of her. So like I said about the ahavta l'reach hamocha, learning how to love another human being, because the man in the marriage is committing himself to all kinds of commitments to her. She's just agreeing to be separate from anybody else. She's only going to be his. But he's committing to clothe her, to feed her, to shelter her. And I'm going to say it. I mean, I said this is for mature audiences only, right? He's committing to provide her sexual needs. Now, we will talk about the first year of marriage especially, even though we just discussed this idea of miyut, diminishing derech eretz, diminishing the sexual act. The first year of marriage is an exception. In fact, I will get into some of the hints in the Torah that one should be with their wife that first year every opportunity that he could. I mean, obviously in Judaism we have nida. That's the time of the menstrual cycle, and there's a few days afterwards. Could be 12 days on average that a man cannot be with his wife. A woman cannot be with her husband. But so excluding that, he should be with her as much as she wants. And there's an exception of Yom Kippur, of course. But anyway, we'll get to that soon enough. I want to go through some of the other ideas. The Song of Songs, which we actually today, we just left the 7th day of Passover, which fell out on Shabbat. So we read the Song of Songs on Shabbos, on the Shabbat of Passover. Call it Chol HaMoed, but today, this year, it fell out on the 7th day. But we read the whole book in public, in synagogue, and the idea is that it's not just holy, it's not just in the Tanakh because it's holy, but our rabbis call the Song of Songs Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies. It's describing a love relationship between man and God. And there are many allusions, sexual allusions, between a man and a woman. So this is really to get across the idea, once again, that the natural drives that God gave us for these relationships, right, for whether it's the woman to the man or the man to the woman, is the ultimate drive to get us to the point where we have this, I'll call communion, intimacy, dveikus. Dveikus means a cleaving, a clinging, like glue, right? Because we will discuss this idea of becoming one flesh. So even though in the first year there is a discouragement from miyut, a discouragement from minimizing, but through the rest of the marriage, let's just say until pension time, right? Because once a woman passes the point where she is not in nida, she's no longer in the menstrual cycle. The truth is, even when she's pregnant, she's also usually, a healthy woman usually does not menstruate either. And it could even go on for another year or two while she is nursing. So there is there's no limit, let's just say like that. When a woman is not menstruating, so a man and a woman could be intimate. But still, nevertheless, the idea here is to develop the other parts of the relationship and not to become animalistic, not to degrade yourself just because it is permissible. In fact, we did discuss this, and we'll discuss it again tonight. The Ramban discusses Kadoshim Tiyu, right? I think it's chapter 19 in Leviticus. God says, you should be holy, for I am holy. The Ramban famously expresses the idea that just because it's permissible to you does not mean you should have a free-for-all. You should be well disciplined, right? Just because that cake is kosher, just because it's pretty and it smells good and it tastes good and it looks good and all that other stuff, doesn't mean you can eat the whole cake. It doesn't mean you should eat the whole cake, right? Just because it's permissible for you doesn't mean that you should spend your whole time involved. Now, I do want to stress there's another idea here, and I wonder where I put it. Oh, here it is. The Ramban wrote a book. Now, they're not sure who wrote it, but most people attribute it to the Ramban. Now, it's not the famous letter that he wrote to his son, which is called the Igeret HaRamban. It's called Igeret HaKodesh, okay? Igeret HaKodesh is a sefer. It's a very short book. It's like 6 very short chapters that deal with, and I'll just tell you the title here, A Guide to Spiritual Intimacy. Now, the reason I'm showing this, there happens to be other volumes out there. This particular volume, my Chavrus and I, he's really responsible for this book, Dr. Moshe Kor, and it's published by Mosaica Press. Now, I think it's out of print, but you could email them and maybe get a PDF copy or something, or maybe they'll print it on demand. So it's called Igeret HaKodesh, which means the Holy Letter. Actually, he wanted to call it the Holy Act. Okay, it's about intimacy, and we're talking about the Ramban about 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago. And we'll call it the medieval times. But he accessed all of the holy writings, and he discusses. Anyway, I don't want to tell you too much about the particular book. I want to discuss what's in it, I helped him translate this book, so we had a lot of fun. We had a tremendous amount. We met every day for years, and we did many projects, and this was just one of them. And I got so much out of it. But so this book begins with this idea that Yediyah is not a dirty thing. Knowing your wife is what the ultimate is in our relationship with Hashem. That's really how the whole book begins. And then he goes into other subjects of timing, what you can eat beforehand, what time it should be, what should be on your mind, what you have. Now, this, like I said, this is for mature audiences only. And what you have on your mind, there's a direct link to what you have on your, I'll call it your mind below. The scrotum actually looks like a brain, right? There are these, I don't know how to describe it, but wrinkled, anyway, the seed will pick up the vibrations of your thoughts, who you can think about, what you should be thinking about during this holy act, as if you're going into the Holy of Holies, right? The high priest on Yom Kippur goes into the Holy of Holies. I mean, we're talking about like Yaakov when he was breeding the sheep or the goats and the different colors. Lavan was trying to trick him, and he was able to manipulate the outcome, the pattern on the sheep is because of things that he presented to the sheep. It wasn't necromancy. It's actually very natural. What you think of. In fact, there's a story in the Gemara. A woman happened to be a white couple, and they gave birth to a black baby. And, of course, there was some suspicion. I mean, what else? Right? There was some suspicion that perhaps she was not loyal. And the rabbis investigated, and they found there was a picture in the bedroom of a black person on the wall. So what you think about, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, okay? I'm just saying what you think about is, yeah, it should be holy. You want holy seed. You want children who are going to be holy. So your thoughts at the time of intimacy and leading up, oh, there's a lot of preparation. I mean, we can call it foreplay, but it's words of kindness. It's words of endearment. It's, maybe even what you did during the day with her, right? So we'll call it, I don't want to call it foreplay. It sounds too debased. But there is, I don't know what other word to speak about it, but there is this concept of what leads up to, right? The warmth, the love that you can share with somebody that has nothing to do with the act itself.
Nope.
That is very important. So I will read it's a paragraph. It's a paraphrased paragraph because there's a few dots here. So he begins his letter like this. It's actually chapter 2. Know that this union is a holy and pure thing when it is properly conducted in its proper time and with the proper intention. A person should not think that in this proper union there is something ugly or degrading, God forbid. Right? I know there are other religions that think like that. Hashem, may he be praised, has created everything according to his wisdom. He has not created things to be ugly or shameful. Now, it is true that in Judaism there are no names for these, the genitalia, for we call the member, hers or his. And there is a certain modesty involved, not shame, right? There's nothing shameful or ugly. It's just out of pure modesty. Anyway, he created man and woman, and he created each and every organ and their functions. There is nothing degrading about this. So that's how he begins chapter 2. Very powerful idea here. So again, I had such great hana'ah, such great pleasure, and I learned tremendous amount.
Wow.
And it was great review also in helping him translate. It was a great honor to be part of that. So intimacy is obviously one of the most powerful human drives. It has to be used correctly, right? Obviously, it could be used, right? There's so much potential there. It could be used for holiness and to create oneness. On the other hand, God forbid, if it's misused, it could wreak havoc and destruction. So one of the things we have to do is to understand how to properly balance the drive and to understand what the Torah's definition of marriage is all about. Okay, because this relationship is what allows intimacy. So what is marriage? So in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, I'll let you read that.
24. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.
Okay, so what does it mean, one flesh? Obviously, there's in Judaism, we always think there's more than one level of understanding, right? So the physical coming together of a flesh, right, with someone else's flesh is true. That is an idea here. But also the children that should come from the relationship. That also, in other words, part of my DNA, part of what I give into this creation, and what my wife gives to the creation. Now, the truth is, in Judaism, it's not only about procreation, okay? I know that may come as a shock, right? So, as I mentioned, if a woman is pregnant and she's not menstruating, your seed is actually helping. It's very beneficial for the fetus, is what we say. Now, in what way? I really don't know the scientific aspect, but as I already mentioned, what you have in your mind is going down into the seed and then is penetrating. So you're having an influence, whether you like it or not. If you're angry with your wife and God forbid you're involved in a domestic dispute, you still have relations that could be very disturbing to the fetus, right? So shalom bayis, the peace in the home, is of utmost importance. Okay, so the idea is not just cleaving, but becoming one flesh. So there's really two pieces. One is dabek b'ishto, to cling to her, and to become one flesh. So one of the ideas Rashi brings down is regarding a child. Okay, so that's, but the idea is that it's not about getting a tax break or getting some kind of, a great roommate or a great chef or someone to do your laundry, right? It's really about two halves coming together. Now, my wife says I'm very critical of my unmarried friends because I tell them, here he even mentions that Jewish concept of marriage is two halves becoming one and completing each other. I maybe I misinterpret this, but I say that you're not even a half a person. You're nothing. If you're not married,
exponential.
There's no way to grow. There's no way to serve Hashem properly. So, but we do recognize when we give the half shekel, right, in the month ago during Adar. So we're commanded, right, every year to give a half shekel to the temple treasury, and that's going to be used for the korbanot, for the offerings through the financial year that begins in Nisan in the springtime. And the reason a half shekel, or one of the main reasons is one should feel that they're not complete. It's very important to know, right? Even if you are nearing completion, right? You're almost perfect. But you're far from perfect. It's very important, right? It's a humbling, whether it's experience or to be cognizant of how much more you need to grow. When it comes to spirituality, you should look up to people who are greater than you, who are more humble than you, people who are wiser than you, right? We discussed this before. When it comes to material, it's better to look down, not look down like in terms of I'm greater, but to have this gratitude. Wow, thank God I have this. I have what most people or some people don't have. So when it comes to physical things, we look down, i.e., and see how much we actually have. But when it comes to spiritual growth, we have to look up and see how much we're lacking, how far we have to go. And that shouldn't be a depressing situation, but it should be a motivating, right? A motivator. So the idea that we give a half a shekel, we should realize we're not complete. But I want to say, well, people like, oh yeah, I'm just half a person. I would say you're not even. But okay, maybe I'm too tough because I knew what it was like. What it was like being married, and what it was like. I told you I had been married more than once, so there was a period of time that I was not married. And not being married, for a man, I don't know for a woman, but for a man is much more difficult. And in terms of if you're trying to grow spiritually, it's very difficult. Either too many distractions, many reasons. Okay, so we discussed this idea. Now, there's another concept, and I want you to read in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27.
Chapter 1, verse 27 reads, "And God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them."
Okay, so one thing to just ask or to be aware of, in the beginning of the verse, it's singular. So God created man in his image. And in the image of God, he created him. But then it switches. Male and female, he created them. What's going on here? So Rashi explains that initially, Adam was created, I don't know if I can say this word properly, androgynous. Androgynous means both. He had two faces. In other words, like not Siamese twins side to side, but front to back. Okay? And what God did was he divided this being into two halves. And what happens is each half, because even though Adam lived, let's say 5,781 years ago, And that all took place thousands of years ago. We are progeny of Adam. Okay, so what he went through, we're also going through. So he was separated from his wife, and the whole, I'm going to say the whole point of life, the whole goal is to become unified. In other words, let's say for me, right, I'm a guy, right? For those who don't know, I'm a man. And my wife, you got to get in touch with your feminine side. Well, guess what? I got you for that, right? I don't really have to get in touch with my feminine side. I got to get in touch with you. And therefore, by getting in touch with you, and I'm talking about emotionally, intellectually, right? Not just sexually. I am actually getting in touch with my feminine side, which my life's goal is to reunite. In other words, I was born, or let's say created together. Then they were separated. And the goal in life is to reunite. So there is something to this idea of getting in touch with your feminine side. But I just described it my own way, right? There is an idea like that. So he brings down this idea. So before marriage, a person is not whole. Marriage is the process of reuniting the two halves to become one. How can you do this? I know there are people that are not spiritual, or they claim they're not spiritual, they're not religious, and they have this great marriage, right? Maybe they are, right? They just don't realize it, right? Very kind people who work on their character, and there's a lot to be said about that. So the Torah perspective is that marriage creates a new spiritual reality by fusing two halves into a single entity. The holy bond connects you to your spouse for eternity. Now, we do know there is such a thing as divorce, but the commitment that one gets into, it's not like, okay, till death do us part, like the non-Jews say. We don't say that, but there's a commitment that you're willing to go through hell and high water, right? Whatever it means. You're making a huge commitment to take care of somebody. When it comes to children, that's one thing, right? They leave the home eventually, as we saw, right? A child should leave. But when it comes to husband and wife, they really are actually united forever on a spiritual level. I know when I went through a divorce, so the rabbis explained to me, this is like surgery. You're actually, it's a sefer krisos in Hebrew. It's krisos means cutting off. The book, this document, is cutting off, and it can be very, very painful. Okay? So there is, within the marriage, that intimacy of growing together and becoming like one limb. And but basically, the concept of marriage is an expression of oneness. And the longer you're married, the more you, hopefully, the more you feel one. So he mentions divorce can sever that unity, and the Torah recognizes that there are times when divorce is actually appropriate. Realize, however, that divorce, though necessary in certain situations, is akin to amputation. It's the drastic final measure one takes when it becomes essential for survival. Right? There is, like they say, if you don't cut off this gangrenous limb, it's going to infect your whole body, and you will die a very, sudden, painful death. So you have to get rid of this limb, So anyway, that is. Now, what about picking the right partner? Right? It's very important. So I'll mention kindness, honesty, and loyalty. That's going to be the compass, right? That's what you're going to use to direct. Obviously, attraction is important. We call chemistry, right? Humor, being able to make each other laugh, right? All that is very, very good. But it's not actually critical. I asked my rabbi once when I was starting to date, what should I be looking for? Everyone's attracted to beauty. Should I be looking for the most beautiful, whatever, somebody who I really feel attracted to? So he didn't say no, but he did say, that's going to fade away. I'm sorry to tell you, just in case you didn't know, right? That the beauty, the external beauty will fade away. He says, if you can look in her eyes, and that's what you're going to be looking at in 60 years, those same eyes. If you can find the attraction there, which we know is the window to the soul, that's where the attraction really should lie. So he didn't say no, but he focused. He helped me focus. This is what you're looking for. Okay, so let's talk about these three ideas. Kindness. So it's more than just being kind and polite. It actually means being genuinely concerned about the needs of the other person. As I said, v'ahavta l'reacha chamocha. I mean, you're signing a contract. This is in Jewish law. You're signing this ketubah, this contract, that you're committed to taking care of her needs. So you're not having any ulterior motives. It means moving beyond yourself and feeling another person's pain and joy. You cannot truly become one with someone who is selfish and self-absorbed. Obviously, it's the Hebrew word for love in Aramaic, the root, Hebrew and Aramaic are sister or cousin, I don't know, maybe a daughter language.
Yeah.
It's highly related, you know what I mean? So the word for love is ahava in Aramaic and even in Arabic. The word for giving is hav. I think it's in Arabic, it's hab. But anyway, hav, it's the root of ahava, right? So let's say, who loves who more? The one receiving the gift? Someone gets gifts. Oh my God, I love this person. He gave me all kinds of gifts. Or the one giving the gift. The one giving the gift is actually creating the love. And he or she will love the other person by giving. That's what is the, I guess, the catalyst. It's like the main ingredients for love is the ability to give. So obviously, someone who is selfish and self-absorbed is very difficult to love and be loved. What about honesty? So honesty, this is the foundation for trust and communication, right? You want to build a genuine relationship, you have to be able to be honest. You don't want a superficial one. Okay. Now, loyalty. Loyalty means you can trust, you can rely, and you can count on the person. This is the foundation for this commitment. At least the person is willing to try it forever, right? Loyalty. It creates a safe haven for yourself to open yourself up and allow the other person to become an intimate part of your life. Now, I think it's more true for women than it is for men about opening yourself up and giving yourself physically. But for men, they have to make this commitment, and it takes a while. Like, okay, I get married the next day. Oh, I love you. I love you. What do you mean? Where did that come from? You didn't even give anything yet. It's through the process of giving over time that love is going to be built. That relationship is going to be built. And I'm talking about old-fashioned marriage where you're not living with each other. You're not intimate with each other, It's only once you get married, then the intimacy begins and the real giving, begins. And, the day after, I'm in love. I'm in love. It's probably not love. Baruch Hashem, it's okay to be infatuated with your wife. I get it. But real love takes time, and it's giving. I'm not promoting the movie called The Fiddler on the Roof, but it is a classic, and many people have seen it. And I think if you can remind me of the scene, there was a scene, I think after 25 years of marriage, she says, do you love me? And I don't know if it goes both ways, but basically, do I love you? Oh, yeah, right. So basically each one is saying for 25 years, she said, I washed your clothes, I cooked your meals, I did all this. Do I love you? I mean, I've given you for 25 years. Doesn't that make a statement? Didn't that show you that I love you? Right? It's the giving. It's the loyalty. Okay. To finish off, this is just the book because we have a lot more to go through, a lot more sources. But to avoid temptations, right? This is so important. So we did discuss these ideas before about the cistern. The water you should drink is from your own cistern. This is meaning your wife. If you're looking... I know there's a song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. I'm sure there's a song like that, right? So when you have to have a lot of vigilance. You have to have a lot called Guard Your Eyes. In fact, Guard Your Eyes, I think it's guardyoureyes.com. Let me just say, I wrote it down here as a source. If people are interested, guardyoureyes.com. So it's www.guard, Guard, YOUREYES, guardyoureyes.com. A great source for encouragement, especially in today's world with internet, but not only. I mean, so if you're either addicted to the internet or porn or whatever it is, Guard Your Eyes is a great resource, or just as a preventative. So avoiding harmful temptations is so important. Remember, right? Anything precious requires protection. Marriage is sacred, we saw, where you said it's very holy, and it requires great vigilance and care. You really have to make sure you keep your eyes where they belong and avoid going to places where there are these temptations, where you're going to encounter any kind of temptations. So guarding your eyes, it's not just a physical, it's mental, right? You have to start with knowing you have to shield yourself. That'll keep you hopefully from going to inappropriate places. But for example, when your eye, it's the word, strays, right? It strays. I think I mentioned Rav Noach Weinberg says the first glance is free. After that, you have to pay for it. What does he mean? He's like, okay, you're walking down the street. We're not talking about a red light district. We're talking about a normal street. And you see something out of the corner of your eye, so then you don't need to look a second time. Right? Think, it's a mental exercise.
Don't meditate. Yeah.
It's a mental exercise, to restrain yourself. Think of something. Your mind is a powerful thing. Don't waste it. Here he actually says you can avoid temptation by keeping your mind occupied with things that interest you. Right? For example, review the Torah, read a book, think about a question that's been bothering you. So he ends by mentioning the drive for intimacy is incredibly powerful. Channel it toward creating a loving, unified bond with your spouse and toward expressing your desire to become close to the Almighty himself. This is what it's all about. So that is based on his Sefer. I mentioned we have this other book we're also using, and that is Midrash Shmuel. It's written on this Mishnah, the 48 ways. And there's also some very useful information. The first thing he really wants to show us that Derech Eretz really means sexual relations, because Derech Eretz, I mentioned in the beginning, is a very vague term. It just means the way of the land. Now, if it meant manners, what do you mean minimize your manners? That doesn't make any sense. And he goes through all the other possible explanations, and he does justify how it could also be used in these other ways, but he focuses mainly that it has to mean, if you're minimizing something, it has to be something that needs to be minimized. Manners do not need necessarily to be minimized.
Yeah, downplay.
So another thing he kind of discusses is that this is more, right, because we're talking about 48 ways to wisdom. To acquire wisdom is someone who wants to be a Torah scholar. He's more limited in how much he should be with his wife. So there's a long list, depends on your profession. The Talmud actually tells you, right? Let's say you work with dung, you tan leather. So you have a horrible stench. So it says you need to be with your wife, I don't remember, it's every 3 months or every 6 months. I mean, she'll be disgusted by your smell, but she also has needs. So you have to limit yourself. If you're a sailor, so you're gone for certain periods of time. But you have to return. You must make sure to take care of your wife's needs. So you shouldn't go on like a 2-year trip. You have to go only on 6 month or whatever the limitation is. So there's camel drivers, there's donkey drivers. Obviously, these are ancient occupations. But a Torah scholar should be with his wife every Shabbos. Shabbos is like the holiest day, and there's a lot of heavenly influence that comes down on that day. But besides that, the day she goes to the mikveh, and the truth is, any day that she wants. We're talking about from the man's perspective. He should make sure to be there at least that once a week on Shabbat, And anytime that she desires, and anytime she has to go to the mikveh and has to be with you, right? That, I don't mean it in negative sense, has to be with you. She wants to be with you. That's why she's going to the mikveh, that you should be there for her. Next page. So I mentioned there's this idea, just in the ketub itself, in the marriage contract, it says in Aramaic regarding the husband's conjugal duties, conjugal,
yeah.
So it says uma'al levatiche ka'ura kol ara. He's actually committing. This is the Hebrew. I'll basically tell you what it means it's the Aramaic, but I'll tell you what it means in English. And he's writing, he's committed, and I will come to you in the manner of derech eretz, the way of all the land. Now, there's a proof that this is talking about sexual relations. 142. Actually, I'm not sure if that's good enough proof, but the Balaturim explains. I'll explain in a second. On which verse is he talking? On Deuteronomy 24, verse 5. Go to Deuteronomy 24:5.
Deuteronomy 24. 5 reads, when a man takes a new wife, he shall not go out in the army, nor shall he be subjected to anything associated with it. He shall remain free for his home for 1 year and delight his wife whom he has taken.
Okay, so it says that he should delight his wife. So we're talking about the first year. We already mentioned the first year is very special. That's when you're really getting to know the person who you didn't know, right? We're talking about a traditional marriage here. So in Hebrew, it's Vav Shin Mem Chet, V'samach, cause her to be happy. Really, cause her to be happy. So the gematria, believe it or not, is 354. Now, what's so significant? So in the solar year, there's 365 days. Everyone's familiar with that. But the Jewish calendar is not only a solar calendar. We go by a lunar calendar as well. And there's 354 days in a lunar calendar. So the truth is, even though we know that number, that's what we Jews are familiar with, there's actually, it depends on Rosh Chodesh and whatnot, there's actually 355. It's not exactly 354. It's actually 355 in many cases. So the Balaturim explains that you should be with your wife every possible day during that year from the words V'samach, because V'samach is equivalent. The gematria means the numerical equivalent of 354. He says every day except for Yom Kippur. So it means, because he recognizes the word Shana, the word for a year, did I write this right? Is, Shin Nun Hey. The word for a year is 355. That's the gematria. And also the word Kippurim. Kippurim is Ha-Kippurim, which is the name for Yom Kippur, is also gematria of 355. So just keep that in mind, that V'samach, which is 354, means you should be with your wife the first year of marriage, because that's what the context of that verse is talking about. You should make your wife happy. It's all about making your wife happy. So basically what happens, everybody needs a Torah scholar for guidance, right? Even though these 48 ways, and we just discussed the idea that it says derech eretz, it doesn't say minimize sexual relations. Once you start learning about it, then you realize it has to be talking about, creating the power of intimacy without lowering yourself to like an animal.
Right.
So the one of the main lessons here that the Midrash Shmuel wants to get across is you need guidance from a spiritual mentor who'd be able to explain the oral Torah to you. Just another idea. Also, that each spouse should instead make sure they focus on giving pleasure to each other. One of the ideas we spoke about in Parshas Tazria, which speaks about when a woman gives birth to either a male or a female, how many days she's impure. One of the lessons there was that a man, if he's able to please his wife before he pleases himself, the likelihood of giving forth a male is increased. Right? We discussed this before. We'll talk about it again at some point. But the idea here is that, and I don't know, even a woman wants to have a male child as a firstborn. Let's say, I mean, most cases, right? She wants to please her husband. She wants to, men. There's less men in the world than there are women. By how many? I think it's like 0.5%, right? Like 49.5% men and 50.5% women. But you're talking about hundreds of millions. I mean, out of the, if you have 10 billion people on the planet, 0.5% is a lot, right? So anyway, so there is this idea of even a woman would like, in a lot of cases, it's not across the board, depends on a lot of psychological issues and whatnot, that would like to see a firstborn son, or at least one son, right? There is an idea. So if the man makes sure that he pleases his wife sexually, whether it's through foreplay and whatnot, up until, and holds himself back, the chance, I think it's called Shettel method. Anyway, we're not going to go into that right now. That's not what the class is about. What else do we have here? All right, 1 second.
Very practical.
I think there's quite a few verses I wanted to just. Okay.
Shoot, I'll pull them up.
Well, once I just dropped my mouse. Here we go. So there was another verse regarding knowing your wife, and just in 1 Samuel, chapter 1, verse 19.
Oh, 1 Samuel. Forgive me. Is that falls under the prophets? 1 Samuel. I'm sorry. What chapter, Rabbi?
Chapter 1, verse 19.
Go, come on. 19. And they arose early in the morning and prostrated themselves before the Lord. And they returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah, his wife, and the Lord remembered her.
Just remember, I think I mentioned this verse in my video. I was at Kever Shmuel,
right,
the tomb of Samuel. By the way, who's buried there? Samuel 1 or Samuel 2?
That was so nice to see that video.
There's only one Samuel. So this verse, we went to Hannah's spring, meaning the mikveh that Hannah went after she had given birth and wanted to become pure again and be able to go to the temple. So in Hebrew, Elkanah knew Hannah, his wife. In Hebrew, V'yeda Elkanah et Hannah ishto, right? The word, this idea is not to be thought of in a negative sense. This idea of knowing is so crucial. Okay. In Song of Songs, so there's a very important verse. It's in chapter 6, verse 3. You can read it?
Yep, just pulling it up. And my internet seems to be running slower than normal. I don't know why. Verse 3, I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine, who grazes among the roses.
So this is a famous verse that every Jew is familiar with, I imagine, during the month of Elul. Elul is the Virgo, right? It's when the first of Elul, God said, I forgive you. Come up in 40 days and receive the tablets. 40 days from the first of Elul is Yom Kippur, the day of forgiveness. And he says, Ani ledodi v'dodi li, the acronym, the first letter, Aleph of Ani, Lamed of ledodi, Vav of Vidodi, and then the last Lamed. It spells the word Elul. Elul is the month of forgiveness, of Virgo, of renewing the relationship as if there was no issue of the golden calf. We were forgiven of the golden calf. I understand you committed adultery, so to speak. See, idolatry and adultery. When we talk about the five commandments on each tablet, so number 2 is do not worship other gods. Number 7, on the other side, is do not commit adultery. Adultery and idolatry, I know even in English they sound alike, right? You can get confused, right? That this, when we have a relationship with Hashem, the adultery is, God forbid, I'm sure, say the idolatry is, God forbid, like adultery in that relationship, just to bring it home, to bring it full swing, that our relationship with our wives is just like a microcosm of the relationship we have with Hashem.
Wow.
So man's secret is wisdom, called chachma. That's very masculine. The woman's secret is called bina, tnuva, tevuna, understanding. But when you put them together, the chibur, then you get, we call da'at. And this is awareness, very, very key to life. So like man has to get in touch with his feminine side. He has to. And I mean through marriage. I mean, God forbid, and I'm kidding. Anyway, you know where I'm going with that. So just keep in mind that the word in Hebrew for ish is man. How is it spelled? Ish. Aleph, Yud, Shin. Ish. Isha is Aleph, Shin, Hey. So you have an Aleph and a Shin is consistent in both words for man and woman. But the difference, there's a letter, Yud, in a man. We're not going to get into the mystical aspects of why Yud is masculine. And Hey, in the word Isha, is feminine. But those two letters are the name of God, Yud and Hey. Right?
It's huge.
Pronounced Y-A-H. So when you have Hashem in your relationship, when the man is fulfilling whatever it is in Chachma, the Yud, and the woman is fulfilling her with her Bina, but when you mesh them together and you have God in the relationship, then you can be a man and a woman, not an animal, right? Well, let's put it this way. When you take the Yud out and the Hey out, you're left with Aish. Aish is fire. Aish can be destructive. So this is the secret to a happy relationship, to make sure to always bring Hashem into the relationship. Remember, the idea, this title is called Marriage Power, the power of marriage. Okay, there's a few halachot in the Rambam, Hilchas Isur Abiyah. I'm not going to go through them, but if anybody wants to know what I wanted to talk about, it's in chapter 22, the laws 18, 19, 20, and 21 in the laws of forbidden relationships. Here's the idea I wanted to bring. When Lot's daughters, remember, we want to know how come derech eretz can mean sex.
Right.
So go to chapter 19 of Genesis, chapter 19, verse 31.
Reads, and he said, "Behold, now I have desired to speak to the Lord." Perhaps 20.
Chapter 19, verse 31 in Genesis.
I'm in 18. Forgive me, Rabbi. Yep, 31. And the elder said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man on earth to come upon us, as is the custom of all the earth." Is that derech eretz you were talking about? Custom of the earth?
So in Hebrew, custom kederech. Kederech kol haaretz. Derech eretz. You hear the... So...
No, it's clear, yeah. Clear to me anyways. I hope the audience is getting it.
Yeah. So, look, in Proverbs chapter 5, there's a few selected verses. I don't have the numbers of the verses, but you can go through them. For the lips of a strange woman drip honey, and her palate is smoother than oil.
Mm-hmm. Verse
but
3
her
of chapter 5.
Is as bitter as wormwood, as sharp as a two-edged sword.
Mm.
Her feet descend to death, her steps come near the grave. Drink water from your own cistern. Your own cistern is your marriage partner, and running water from your own spring. We discussed these other times. And may your springs spread out rivulets and water in the squares. You alone shall have them, and strangers shall have nothing with you. Your fountain shall be blessed, and you shall rejoice with the wife of your youth. And the last verse I want to bring is a lovely hind and a graceful mountain goat. Her breast will satisfy you at all times. You shall always be intoxicated with her love. So the rabbis say this pasuk, this last verse, is referring to the Holy Torah. When we immerse ourselves into it, we merit to feel its tremendous beauty, and all our needs feel satisfied with no need to drink from broken cisterns. So, yeah, I think it's very important to just focus on this idea that God gave you a gift, that partner.
Wow.
And to focus, not be distracted with the grass is greener on the other side, right? This is 40 days before a seed is actually, what's the word? When it becomes... germinated. And we're talking about the sexual act, conception. 40 days before conception, a heavenly voice goes out and says, this person is destined to marry this person. I mean, just think about what goes into that. I mean, Hashem is making what they ask. What is God doing now that he stopped, right? 6 days he created the world. Now he stopped. What's he doing? He's making shidduchim. He's making marriages. He's making unions. He's making this person meet up with that person and being attracted, and who knows where it goes from there, right? So,
wow.
This idea that 40 days before conception already has been announced who's going to marry who. So this is a gift from Hashem. And I just implore my single friends and my single people I didn't meet yet, pray to Hashem that he makes it easier for you to recognize who your partner is. So that's just the beginning, right? Once you make that decision, you need a lot of prayer also to make the marriage work. It's men and women are different species. Forget about different genders. We don't even talk the same language. We're different species.
Different syntax.
So it's a real miracle that we can actually, relate. And God placed this desire, we'll call it a sexual desire. It's very strong. He placed it within us so that we can carry on the species, that we can actually live together. We can work on our character with the other half, because I'm lacking a certain amount of femininity in my life, right? And the woman is missing a certain masculinity. And only by putting these two different species that really shouldn't even be living under the same roof together, because of this attraction and the willingness to work things out, and the strong desire to love, to give, and it'll transform your whole, I'll call it religious life. I don't think you could be religious That's why I said just because you're not married, you're not half a person. There's no way you can live a religious life. There's no way you can work on your character without someone waking up next to you and saying, what you said to that person, I don't think it was right. Or how can you walk out looking like that? Or now remember, the man can't say that to the woman. The woman can say it to the man. Anyway, so let's end here. Just know that the idea of called marriage power.
Right.
What does this have to do with wisdom? There's no way to acquire wisdom if you are not married and doing it right. And I think that
doing it right, that's so critical.
That experience will make you much. I mean, there are people that are married 60, 70 years. They know. How can they do that? How can they have survived, right? And I don't mean like in a negative sense, but with all their experience, they're much wiser, better people. You can just see it, they're in love and they treat each other with respect, right? They're honest and they're loyal, right? Okay.
Rabbi, is there any way you could close it out, maybe giving a positive word to those that maybe are currently not married out there? A lot of B'nai Noach out there listening. I don't know what the situations their life has gone through, but you've touched on the beauty of it today, the beauty of marriage for sure. Is there any word of encouragement you can give them as we close to those that are not quite married? Have some hope, be wise in looking.
You're looking for someone on the same page, and I'll call it religiously, but I'm trying to think of the word, but hashkafically. So I don't know if that's translatable, let's say with a worldview. So I do believe that there are some B'nai Noach dating sites, right? There are things out there. So you have to be willing to move. You have to be willing to give. Whatever we have to share about, I think we gave the world marriage. There was no marriage before the Jewish people. They invented Kedushin, the separation. Men, and the Rambam discusses, you go to the shuk, you go and you just say, I want you, and that was it. The whole level of humanity changed through what we call, Kedushin. And I mentioned about holy matrimony. I was watching out of curiosity. I forget what it was. One of the princes of Great Britain got married, and I was almost crying at the wedding. I wasn't there. I was watching it along with millions of other people. And it reminded me so much of the things they stole from us, right? About marriage. And it has changed the face of the earth. I mean, we're not animals, right?
No.
So my prayer and my advice is to be open-minded, to find someone to share. Your own personal growth is lacking without that partner. Look into her eyes. Can you imagine yourself with that person if they fit, the main criteria that we're looking for, right? Just read the list again. We say kindness, honesty, and loyalty. And the kindness seems to be one of the most important parts. Abraham was looking for someone who had kindness, right? Rivka, she had this kindness. That's what he wanted for his son Isaac. Okay? So someone who's kind. They don't have to match up everything else, right? Things change. People go through career choices and they change.
Right.
So it's the character, right? The honesty, the loyalty. But I would still think kindness is on the top of the list.
It'll definitely make things go where others cannot. The kindness just is open to be. Yeah, it's beautiful. Rabbi, this has been a wonderful, wonderful class. We missed you the last couple of weeks. It's a joy to hear you share more of the 48 ways to wisdom. This class is one that's got to have special markings. I know it's one for the ages, and I hope that a lot of no-hides out there will grab onto this, pass this around. Like it, share it on social media. Rabbi Poston, thank you so much. Hashem willing, are we on for next week, or is your schedule allow for it?
Hashem, yeah, sure. I'm looking forward.
All right, so Hashem willing. Till then, folks, we're going to sign out. You have a wonderful, wonderful week.